All right, welcome back to the channel. I'm RJ Ronquillo, and I'm still here in beautiful Germany. Actually, it's the first day that is kind of beautiful. I'm sitting here with Mr. Dave Friedman and Sammy Boller, and they're joining me because some of you guys probably might not know this, but we're all from Detroit, Michigan, or the Metro Detroit area. And what's the chances that 3 Metro Detroiters end up in the countryside in Germany? But I figure I would shoot the shit with you guys and kind of pick your brain about Detroit things and how it's all influenced us, because we're kind of... You're not from Detroit. You can't hang out.
Get out. Say, I'm from Detroit.
No.
No, you're not.
But anyways...
Well, I guess I gotta go then. if I'm not welcome here with the Detroit people.
This show is sponsored by Mayonnaise for bringing the beer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayonnaise, for doing that.
Thank you.
And you're doing the whole Sennheiser thing.
Yeah.
Oh yes, also sponsored by Sennheiser.
This is the first time I'm using this thing. I'm not sure if this is how I use it, but...
How cool is Sennheiser?
Yeah.
Very
Thank you,
cool.
Sennheiser.
Bye, Detroit people.
What was your first concert when you were growing up in Detroit? Where, when, who?
1981 Pontiac Silverdome, The Who.
Ooh. 81 who?
80, I think it's 81. Yeah, 80, 81, 82, somewhere there. Hey, the first concert, God, I was young.
Yeah.
And
was it loud?
it was loud. It was also with The Clash and Eddie Money.
Oh, the Money Man.
Yeah. So, and the funny thing is, on my Tone Talk show that I do, we recently had Steve Ferris on, guitar player Steve Ferris.
Yeah.
From Mr. Mister, and he used to play with Eddie Money. And the funny thing is, he told me in the show, he talked about the Pontiac Silverdome, his first show with Eddie Money.
Really?
Or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And I go, I was there.
That was
and he goes, no shit.
Holy shit.
I was there. A couple coincidences happened in that show that was really cool.
That was your first show?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
that was my first show. And I still remember distinctly smell of weed.
Yeah.
And you're a young kid, then you're like, oh,
That's a new smell.
Yeah.
What is that?
And I remember the Power, Bob O'Reilly. So, you know, in the song where they take a break and
it
they
just
go,
starts.
we're all wasted, or they're all wasted, or whatever the line
Yeah.
was in the song. And then the guitars come in, dun, dun, right? So when he did that, he said, they're all wasted. The whole crowd erupted, and there was a pause, and then they came in with the guitars. And it was like the most powerful thing you've
my
ever
gosh.
heard to
I can imagine.
90,000 plus people
Really?
at that show. Yeah, because it held a huge amount of people.
Oh my God.
And when the whole crowd erupted, that many people, that's just
yeah. Ear piercing.
almost never nothing topped it after that.
I bet.
I bet. Yeah.
Although a few concerts did, sort
Yeah.
of, maybe.
What about you, Sammy?
I grew up going to the Palace. I don't know if you skipped town before.
No, of course.
Okay, cool. I've been trying to think of my first show there, but I've seen everybody there, man, as a kid. This is like early 2000s. So
Yeah.
like, I saw The Who there, which was amazing. Van Halen. I saw G3 when I was really, really young, maybe like not even 10 years old.
Yeah.
Like, that was one with Vi and Satriani and Yngwie.
Was that it?
Okay.
Yeah, it was that
That was
tour.
at the Palace?
They did it at the Palace the first time. It was their first
Wow.
tour. Yeah, that's cool. That was before I played guitar or anything, so I was like super
Nice. My first concert was actually at the Silverdome as well. 1985, Jackson's Victory Tour, which was basically...
Oh, I remember
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's
so that was
sweet.
Michael Jackson. It was Jackson 6, basically.
Right.
It was Michael Jackson and all of his brothers, and it was, sponsored by Pepsi. Was 85, so I was like maybe 8 years old or something. And my parents got us the absolute nosebleed seats in the Silverdome, which is like...
Which is far.
Yeah, it's
But
really fun.
they prepared and they bought binoculars for us. So I basically watched the whole concert through binoculars. And I remember that there were so many people there crying. Oh,
Get away.
shoe fly.
Not a fly.
Shoe bee. I remember specifically there were so many girls and kids crying that I was just like, everyone's crying, so I'm going to cry too. So I just started crying. I was so young that I just started crying because everyone else was like, when you're a kid and like your friend's crying, you're just like, just for no reason. So that was my first concert, but I wasn't playing guitar. I wasn't interested in guitar
right.
then. But at that time when you went to the Who concert, were you playing guitar?
Yeah.
So you were
And then
totally
I
into
had
it?
started, yeah. My friend named Marty, who runs a guitar store in Detroit now called Motor City Guitar.
Yeah.
He was my what I would call I didn't have a brother. I was the only child. So he was my brother growing up. We were inseparable, and all growing up I think from the time I was 5 or 4 when I first moved into the area or something.
Yeah.
And he went to most of these concerts with me.
So he was kind of pushing you into that direction.
Well, he played guitar first.
Yeah.
So then it's like, I want to play guitar, and then we're all getting into music and stuff. So
when did you go from being a musician into getting into amp designing?
Well, originally I moved from Detroit to California with the idea of being a musician,
Right.
But I started working in the industry, working for Andy Brower Studio Rentals at the time, and which was a studio instrument rental company and cartage company for all the studio musicians like Tim Pierce and Steve Lukather and Michael Landau and like Thompson, all the greats. Thompson, Dan Huff.
Sure.
Tim Pierce, like that, So, I mean, I started doing that, which when you start becoming a little more, when you start working in the industry, some of your hopes and dreams get a little beat up,
Right.
A little bit, because you realize, oh, this is how it is, and this is how this goes, and So I was still trying to do bands and stuff at the time. Didn't really pan out, and eventually I just started getting so into doing what I was doing, which became, I'm just a short, brief story, because I've done this so many times here, but a guy that was doing guitar rigs for guitar players left the company, and I said, hey, I think I can do this. So that started my career in making guitar systems for guitar players. So that's what I've been doing all my life. And, I do Eddie Van Halen's rig and Steve Stevens and Jerry Cantrell's, and that B's going to get you. So that snowballed over the years. But early in the early 90s, I got together with Bruce Egnater, and we made the first guitar preamp, the IE4, the very first Egnater product.
Yeah.
Well, at least commercially.
I remember that, yeah.
IE4 preamp, and we were partners. And he was sort of my mentor in the amp business. So in what... I'm self-taught, but he's the one that started me down the path. But I was always the guy that took everything apart.
Right.
I used to race BMX bikes when I was a kid.
Oh, sure. So
I knew how to take everything apart and build it back up again in minutes. And just like, I just was one of those guys, mechanically inclined.
Yeah.
Played with tools. You know?
I'm still not like that.
I'm not like that either. No, I wish I was.
So Sammy, you're an amazing guitar player, obviously, but you're also you're touring as well. And you're recently got the gig with Scott. Is that correct?
I've been filling in with Scott's stuff. Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. I met Scott because I played in a band for a long time, and we were on the same label as Scott.
Okay.
So we were opening for him. That's how I met him. But he lives in Nashville too, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's a good guy, man. But he hit me up out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey, you can come stay at my guest house, come do a couple gigs." I was like, "Great." So when we get home, I'm going out to play with him.
That's amazing.
Gigs. But my main focus right now, I just did an instrumental record, my first solo record. So I'm trying to get that out when I get home too.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So
man.
Growing up in Detroit, you grew up like the early 2000s-ish, would you say, or?
I was born in '92.
Yeah.
So like early 2000s. Yeah.
So.
I have a daughter his age.
There you go. He's your son.
He could be my son.
Yeah.
Potentially.
You're influenced. I feel like you're influenced by a lot of players from one before you were born. Yeah. So, growing up in Detroit, how did you get into that?
Into that?
Z-Rock?
Z-Rock. Well, I know that station well. I don't know exactly.
Was there
my parents are both musicians, so like when I first started playing guitar, they were in all. My dad was really into Van Halen and stuff like that. And then after him, I discovered like Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
So I went through a big phase of that. But I'm really lucky. I was telling Dave the other day, it's like when I first started learning, it was before YouTube. Really, it was like YouTube was a thing, but not big. It wasn't like you just search any song and learn it. So, like I learned mostly by ear. Like slowing songs down. It was like the really early era of like I used a software called Transcribe,
with the exclamation point.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and that's pretty much how I learned to play. Just like trying to figure out songs.
Well, I tell a lot of people that's probably one of the best things you can do to become a better musician is being able to hear.
Training your ear. Yeah. So I'm mostly from my parents. Probably is how I.
Were
got
you
into
influenced by like Detroit music at all?
I really love Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time when I was a young kid, like when I was a kid, the big Detroit music was Jack White. That's when he was like exploding, you know.
Right.
And he used to just play all the clubs around town. Like I was too young to go see him, but a lot of my friends that are a little bit older, they'd see Jack all the time.
Yeah.
you
And
know?
he lives in Nashville now.
And he does. Yeah.
Man, you should just move to Nashville now.
A lot of my friends and the guys in my former band, they all moved to Nashville.
I think Nashville is becoming like the new Detroit expat type.
It's
place,
definitely
you know?
full of musicians, man.
Yeah, but now
You
you're
know?
going to see everyone move back to Detroit.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's going. It's like an ebb and flow.
Because now it's getting a little too crowded in Nashville.
Dave, were you listening to local Detroit music growing up? And
Yes. Well, so, the first albums I remember having, when you're a kid, you just
Yeah.
don't quite know what you like or do yet, and I remember the first things I remember having, which is kind of weird and embarrassing. Church bells. Come on, more? No, just one?
Just one, I guess.
Oh, but,
yeah. It's early.
It was, I remember, well, this is going to date me. 8 tracks. So, Sean Cassidy.
wow.
And
that's
Blondie on 8 track.
Okay.
But then later with albums, Elton John's Greatest Hits, Aerosmith Toys in the Attic record,
Yeah.
which was a fantastic record. I remember distinctly those 2 records early on. But then with my friend Marty, we went through a phase of really, really heavy stuff. So almost, satanic heavy, like like Venom and Merciful Fate
Yeah.
and like all those
King
bands,
Diamond.
Krang, King Diamond, all the era, heavy, Raven, all these
I
Raven,
crazy
had that on vinyl.
heavy bands, Krang magazine style bands,
Okay.
Went through that phase, but then kind of got out of that phase and got more into the Van Halen sort of phase.
Right.
And then that was a big influence and stuff. But Detroit bands, you know what? I didn't really get into till later, like the MC5 and things like
I'm
that.
the same way.
But now I totally appreciate what the MC5 was doing, because I realized that now later in life, I realized that I like a little bit of punk infused with rock.
Yeah.
So
And a lot
I
of
like
people-
the punk attitude and aggression,
Yeah.
but fused with a little more like a hard rock sound. So like if you can fuse the two,
Yeah. It's like a more musical punk rock.
almost like
Right.
if you can fuse the sleazy sort of Aerosmithy kind of raw rock kind of thing with some hard rock catchy songs,
Right.
mixed with a little punk attitude.
Yeah.
You get my perfect kind of trifecta.
Perfect.
Right.
So I didn't really appreciate them till later.
Yeah. I'm the same
Well, I was
way.
also in that era too. His Marty's sisters and stuff were into, like the classic stuff like Led Zeppelin and the Stones and things like that. So that was kind of chunked in with the Van Halen and all that stuff as influences and stuff.
Right.
Which I don't think you have to have those influences
Yeah.
as being
Right,
any like
of
sort
course.
of
I feel like
rock
you,
guitar player.
Yeah, I feel like you and I almost had like the same
Similar experience.
similar like we listened to the same stuff growing up, although I grew up probably a decade prior or 2 decades.
No, I don't know. Yeah, but
like,
what town were you from?
so I'm originally from Grosse Pointe,
Grosse Pointe, right?
which is, a suburb of Detroit.
Yeah.
Right. Did you grow up listening to the Riff then, or Z?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that 101?
101.1. Yeah. That was always my station.
That's
too.
one thing I've always pointed out was like Detroit radio growing up was awesome.
Great. Yeah.
For the most part, like I knew every single classic rock song by the time I was 10 years old.
I mean, I think the Detroit bar scene and rock scene, like when I was growing up, was crazy.
And
Right.
it's still.
I mean,
good,
was
yeah.
crazy. I mean, so local bands, we were going to see bands like Seduce and
Yeah.
things like that.
Who are Friedman?
Who are Friedman
Artists.
artists, yes, now. Years later, I didn't know them at all then, and I finally got hooked up with Dave Black years later,
Yeah.
like only last.
Who lives in Grosse Pointe now?
Who lives in Grosse Pointe,
Grosse
yes.
Pointe has a great place. Yeah.
And going to see shows that they were doing at the time was just packed. Like selling out 2 nights at Harpo's with a local band,
Yeah.
like, and just crazy packed. And as you guys all know, any show in Detroit, the crowd is really into it. I
Yeah.
mean, like, they're screaming their heads off. They're generally drunk as hell, and they're going for it.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
in seeing this show, which makes all Detroit shows, amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
When you move to another state, you realize just what you miss.
It's not the same.
Yeah, yeah. Like even big concerts, like you go and just like now you go to these shows and you're just like, God, everyone's fucking tame. The hell?
Yeah.
I mean, you know why? In Detroit, going, everyone's screaming. Someone's tripping over someone because they're drunk. Someone's punching someone.
That's the
There's a
thing,
fight
like,
outside.
nothing-
There's a fight outside. Some security guard's hauling some guy away.
Yeah, nothing, like I think about all the concerts I've been to, and nothing compares to like concerts I saw at Pine Knob or the Palace,
Palace,
or the
yeah.
Silverdome. Like
Where-
I had the best times at those shows.
Yeah.
And now I go to shows and
Yeah.
it's like, I remember seeing Ozzy. Where did I see Ozzy?
Like Pine
Recently. No, this is
recently.
recently, and it was like they started at 8 and they were off by like 9:30, like done. I'm like, that's it. I remember concerts going into like midnight.
Midnight.
Yeah, unless you go see Paul McCartney's show, which is 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, he still plays really
I think
long.
Guns N' Roses is usually 4 hours now.
Almost 4 hours.
I
I
saw
don't
that
know if I
before,
could.
it
I
feels
don't know if I could
I saw Guns.
go that long.
It was Guns, Metallica, Faith No More. I
You
think.
saw that too, or
I saw
that
wow.
too. Good one.
In Detroit?
Yeah.
Where? Where was that? Maybe the Silver.
It was either the Palace or the Silverdome. I can't remember. I think it might have been the Palace. After Metallica, I think we waited 2.5 hours before Guns went on.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, he's,
That was that tour.
yeah.
Of course.
I remember when I was really young. I saw them when it was just Axl's band. I saw them at the Palace.
Oh,
And same
yeah.
thing. You're a kid. You're not used to like people just blowing through the stage time. You know,
I
they
mean,
showed up way late.
A
Yeah.
couple other concerts that blew me away as a kid that stand out in my memory. Again, this would be at Joe Louis Arena. In 1984, I saw Van Halen.
That was amazing.
Where, concerts back then were different. Mainly back then you had huge trucks carting around box PAs, not line arrays.
Yeah.
And these box PAs sounded amazing, sounded better. Technology has improved, sound has gotten worse.
Interesting.
In general.
In general.
When you used to see these shows, box PAs, you could feel it in your chest when they hit the kick drum. It just like a
It's
thunk,
a physical thing. Yeah.
like a thunk in your chest, though.
Yeah.
Now it's like it's down by your balls. Now
Oh,
it's
okay.
like it's the subs. There's too much subs and nothing in the middle and too much
Yeah.
highs, and it hurts your ears and it doesn't seem loud, but yet it hurts your ears.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Then it was loud and it hurt your ears, but you felt the power of it.
Right.
And I remember distinctly Van Halen opening up with Unchained, and it was
And when he would
just
dunk, dunk, dunk.
It's probably
just like
Yeah.
yeah,
massive.
unbelievable. The other one, AC/DC.
I could. Yeah.
So mid 80s somewhere, 85ish or something. I don't know what tour. I don't remember what tour it was.
Right.
Crushingly loud. I mean, they're crushingly loud now, but back
It
with
was
those box
louder then.
PAs, oh man,
Just
It was like
insane.
just
crushing.
a tunnel.
But
into
no,
your-
it was more of
into
a
your-
feeling. That's the thing you don't get now. Now it's loud and it hurts,
and it's all sub.
and it's all
It's all
sub, and it
low
does.
end, yeah.
You don't. Back then, you felt it in your chest and everything, and it's almost like you were enveloped, like surrounded by the tone, and it's just like you physically feel
Yeah.
the power,
Right.
which you don't do anymore. Any show,
Yeah.
and I
was
miss that.
That was the good old days.
I've talked to sound guys about that, actually, sound guys that were around, and a good friend of mine, this guy Tom Abraham, who is now mixing Greta Van Fleet, but Tom was Alice in Chains sound guy, Marilyn Manson sound guy, Garbage, and
Oh, cool.
and we talked to in depth about that. He goes, yeah, it's just in the old days. He goes, with the box PAs, it was so simple. You had an analog mixer and the box PAs. Yeah, you had some outboard gear and stuff like that, but pretty much you put up the faders and it sounded great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, now, in order to just get that great, I have 6 plugins on this channel and 7 plugins on that channel and so much on the master bus just to try to make the PA sound sort of like that it used to.
That's crazy.
And he goes, you can
like
recall it
reverse
all,
engineering.
fortunately,
Yeah.
but it's a whole different way of doing it.
A lot of studios have that problem as
Yeah.
well. You know.
It's a whole different way of
I
doing
mean,
it.
like a lot of studios will throw in a bunch of plugins to make it sound like a tape machine.
Yeah, isn't it
Right.
stupid? Isn't it
It's just like-
stupid? After a while, you're like, really?
One thing that's cool though is in Detroit there's an amazing studio called Rust Belt Studios. That's where Greta Van Fleet does all their stuff. And they're one of the few, like really in the Midwest, it still records the tape.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when you're mixing in Pro Tools. Even if you're on a real board, I mean, you really have to dial it in.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're recording a tape, like recording a live rock band, just throw it up.
Throw it up. Wow, the mix is good.
Wow, it sounds great. Yeah. Maybe tweak it a little, but
what are we doing? What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember where I used to play in Detroit? That's what I was curious about.
What's that?
Where did you used to play in Detroit?
So I left Detroit after high school, and I didn't really gig during high school.
Oh,
I think I played at the St. Andrews once, and then the Majestic once. I mean, oh no, and I played in a punk band. I played drums in a punk band, and then we used to play. It was like a squatter warehouse, a squatter thing.
That's
but it was
cool,
called.
though.
It was 404 Willis, so it was right. What's that part of town? Not Corktown. Anyways, it escapes me, but it's all up and coming now, and me and my friends visited that address, and now it's like a really fancy boutique.
Really?
But I remember that was like where all the homeless people would hang out, and like they'd have their trash can fires, and we would go into this little room and just play punk.
That sounds great.
And just like,
it sounds awesome.
These guys with like mohawks, just
going,
like straight face, and looked like they hated it, but then they're like, yeah, man, that sounds good.
Yeah, when it's done. Yeah, of course.
Excellent.
Yeah. But really, I didn't do a lot of gigging in high school. How about yourself?
I did a lot of the same places. St. Andrews is probably my favorite to play, though.
I'm just glad it's still there.
And it's still doing
a lot
really
of
well.
venues
Yeah.
are still there.
It's Live
Maybe
Nation.
they've changed their name.
No,
like
it's still
the-
St. Andrews.
Well, I mean, but like the Fillmore used to be the
State Theater. Yeah. The
whatever
Fillmore's
Pine Knob
great.
is now and all that stuff.
DT.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same. But those venues, man, I mean, they're still kicking, you
Yeah.
know? And there's a lot of great artists that still come through,
Yeah.
you know? Mostly because of the history, you know?
Yeah, you have to.
Even Harpo's is alive again.
Even
Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's still alive again.
And it's still the same.
And it's still the same.
Although they
And
updated
The
system.
same.
They updated the PA.
splendid-
They updated the PA, but I remember going there in the '80s, and the chairs and tables are still the same ones.
Wow.
Still
I don't
smells
know
the
how
same.
many layers of stick are on those tables at this
Gosh.
point.
Or what diseases might be on this end. I had one more question before we sign off. And this is a very Detroiter question. Best Coney dog? Lafayette.
Lafayette, yeah.
I didn't even get to say the other one.
Lafayette or American?
There you have it.
Lafayette.
Coney. The only Coney dog you should have in Detroit. You guys, Dave, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Sammy,
So nice to meet you, man.
I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, click that thumbs up, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Fucking